I didn't notice her the first few times. Or maybe I did. But the memory didn't stick until one Tuesday afternoon when the cafe was quieter than usual. I had claimed my usual spot near the window, the kind of seat where you can pretend you're working but really just watch people come and go. She came in with a canvas tote bag and ordered without glancing at the menu, like she'd been here 100 times. The barista nodded, already reaching for the thermos she always brought. That was the first detail that caught me. The thermos. Old steel, scratched near the lid, carried like an extension of her hand. Not a travel mug, not something new and shiny. Familiar, personal. She sat 2 tables away, laid a paperback flat on the wood, and started reading before the steam even lifted from her cup. The kind of confidence that says the room bends around her, not the other way. I pretended to scroll my phone but kept looking. Not staring, not exactly. Just timing my sips to catch glimpses. The way her fingers smoothed the page edge, how she tilted her head slightly when the words caught her. She wasn't trying to be noticed, which only made it worse. Or better. The next week, she was there again. Same tote, same thermos. This time, the barista mixed up my order and she was the one who corrected him. "He usually gets the Americano, right?" she said with half a smile. I froze. My throat worked around a laugh that didn't quite come out. Yeah, that's me. It was nothing, but also everything. A stranger remembering what I drink. She went back to her book, but I felt marked. Since then, I've started counting the little things. The soft tap of her ring against the cup when she lifts it. The pause she makes before answering when someone interrupts her reading. The way she pushes her glasses up with her middle finger instead of her index. It's ridiculous how much of my head she occupies with movements that last half a second. I tell myself it's just a distraction. I've been sending texts to no one, drafts that hover unsent in my phone. A message to my brother I never finish. Notes to an old classmate I don't send because it feels too late. Sometimes, I just open the screen and stare at the blinking cursor, like the phone could fill the quiet if I let it. Instead, I fold napkins into tight squares until they're stiff, and I keep glancing toward her table, half expecting her to look up and catch me. She doesn't. Not yet. Today, though, something shifted. She left before me, tucking the paperback into her tote with a small sigh that felt heavier than the room. As she passed, she touched my table lightly with her fingertips. Not enough to leave a mark, but enough for me to know it wasn't an accident. I didn't say anything. My mouth opened, then closed. I just nodded like that was a normal thing people did, brushing hands across strangers' tables. When I finally looked down, my folded napkin wasn't where I left it. In its place was a slip of paper, torn from her book. A phone number, written in ink that had bled faintly into the page fibers. I stared at it so long the barista had to clear his throat to ask if I needed anything else. No, I needed everything else. I waited 3 days before calling. Long enough to pretend I wasn't waiting, short enough to admit I was. Her voice on the other end was calm, like she had expected it. She suggested tea instead of coffee. Her place, upstairs from the cafe, she said, like it was nothing. When I knocked, she opened the door with a towel over her shoulder, the faint smell of lemon and steam drifting past her. The apartment was quiet, books stacked in uneven towers, a record player humming low in the corner. She handed me a mug of jasmine tea, the steam curling between us. "It's better at home," she said, then sipped without waiting for my reply. I don't know what I expected, maybe small talk, maybe silence. Instead, she asked if I lived nearby, how long I'd been in the city. I told her bits and pieces. 2 years since moving here, the warehouse job I pretend is temporary. The classes I keep saying I'll take but don't. She listened without filling the pauses, just nodded and let the silence breathe. When I asked about her, she gave less. that she'd been in the building longer than most, that the cafe owner was an old friend. She didn't say more, but when her eyes drifted to the framed photo on the shelf, a boy my age, maybe younger, I understood enough. She caught me looking and added softly, "My son. He's in Boston now." I nodded, too quickly, and something tightened in my chest. The age between us stretched across the room like a third presence. I could feel it in the way I adjusted how I sat, how I held the mug with both hands so they wouldn't shake. I wondered if she felt it too, or if she had already made peace with it years ago. We talked about smaller things after that. Music on the record player. The neighborhood changing. I found myself noticing how she tucked her hair behind her ear when she laughed, how the steam from her cup fogged her glasses for a moment before she wiped them with her sleeve. The risk was there, unspoken. I kept imagining what it would look like from the outside. Me leaving the third time I went to her apartment, it wasn't planned. I'd stopped by the cafe, didn't see her at her usual table, and before I thought better of it, I was pressing the buzzer upstairs. She opened the door slower this time, almost as if weighing whether to let me in. Her place looked the same, the half-read books, the record player, but she seemed different. More guarded. She poured tea anyway, set the mugs down between us on the low table. We sat close, closer than before, knees nearly brushing. She asked about my job again, and I gave the same answer, but I could feel her eyes on me longer this time, like she was measuring something unspoken. Then, halfway through my story about a late shift, she cut in softly, "You shouldn't spend so much time here." The words sat heavy. I looked up, searching her face, but she kept her gaze on the steam rising from her cup. "I mean, you're young," she added, almost like an apology. "You'll want other things. Not this." I wanted to laugh, to argue. Instead, I just nodded too slowly, like my head was moving through water. Silence stretched, and I started folding the edge of a napkin again, tighter and tighter until it tore in my hands. We might have stayed like that, circling each other in silence. But then came the knock. Her neighbor, a woman about her age, stepped in with a bag of groceries. She greeted me with surprise, her eyes flicking between us. The room shifted instantly. I mumbled something about just leaving. She didn't stop me, not then. Only after the door closed behind the neighbor did she reach out, quick, and touch my wrist. "Stay," she said. So quietly I almost didn't hear it. I stayed. Later, as the record clicked at the end of its side, we both leaned in at the same moment to lift the needle. Our hands brushed, lingered longer than they should. I felt her inhale, sharp, like she was about to say something. My chest tightened, ready for, I don't know what, but she pulled back first. Standing, it was late, the streets almost empty, the cafe lights dimmed behind us. She had agreed to walk me part of the way, though the truth was we were both just delaying the moment of parting. The air smelled faintly of rain, though the pavement was dry. We walked in uneven steps, her tote slung against her hip, my hands buried in my jacket pockets. Nothing remarkable about it, and yet every second felt sharpened. She asked if I ever thought about leaving the city. I told her I thought about it all the time, that I never stayed anywhere long enough to grow roots. She nodded, not looking at me, her mouth pressed thin. "I used to think that way too," she said. "But then I stopped leaving, stopped starting over. Maybe I just got tired." Her voice cracked on that last word, barely audible. We slowed near a bench under a broken street lamp. She sat first, her shoulders folding inward as if she wanted to disappear into the wood slats. I sat beside her, careful not to let my knee touch hers. For a while, neither of us spoke. Just the sound of a car passing, the faint buzz of the lamp overhead. Finally, she said, "I shouldn't have let this start." The words felt heavier than anything before. I turned toward her, searching for her eyes, but she kept them fixed on the ground. "What do you mean?" My voice sounded too thin, almost defensive. She shook her head. "You don't understand. You remind me of—" She stopped, pressed her fingers against her lips. "It's not fair to you." I wanted to ask who I reminded her of, her son, maybe, or someone else. But the thought of the answer scared me. She wasn't at the cafe that week. Or the next. First, I told myself she was busy. People like her had lives that stretched beyond a table and a paperback. But by the third empty visit, the excuses started to sour. I tried calling once. The line rang, then cut to silence. No voicemail. No answer. I hovered on the thought of climbing the stairs to her door, but each time I walked past the buzzer, my hand stalled. Then one evening, I saw her across the street. She wasn't alone. A man walked beside her, a little older than me, younger than her. His hand brushed her arm casually, as though it had done so 100 times before. She noticed me before I could look away. Her smile was small, practiced, polite. She didn't stop walking. The next day, I skipped the cafe. 2 days later, I still didn't go. I told myself it didn't matter. I had shifts to cover, bills stacking up. But the truth was, I couldn't stand the thought of waiting for a seat that stayed empty. I kept replaying that night on the bench. The way her voice faltered, the almost confession she swallowed back. I wondered if that man was the missing piece, the explanation she never offered. An ex who hadn't really left. A new beginning she hadn't told me about. My chest felt tight, not with heartbreak, but with something duller. Confusion. A sense of being put on pause. Like the story had reached the middle of a sentence and forgotten the rest. I drafted a message. "I don't know if I should keep showing up. Just tell me if I should stop." I watched the cursor blink against the words, as though mocking me. Then I backspaced, letter by letter, until the screen was empty again. The cafe window was lit across the street. I stood there a long time, watching strangers drift in and out of the seat where she used to sit. My hands stayed in my pockets. I didn't cross. I didn't knock. Not that night. Not the night after. It was almost closing time when I finally walked back into the cafe. I hadn't planned it. My feet just carried me there, like the place had been waiting. The room was nearly empty. She was at her table, no book this time, just a mug cooling in front of her. She looked up when I came in. Not surprised. Not exactly pleased either. Just steady. I hesitated, then slid into the chair across from her. Neither of us spoke at first. The hum of the refrigerator in the back, the faint scrape of the barista cleaning counters. It all filled the silence. "You disappeared," she said at last. I laughed once, short. "So did you." Her eyes softened, then narrowed. "You saw me with him." I nodded. No sense in pretending. She pressed her palms flat on the table, as if steadying herself. "He's complicated. Not what you think." She paused. "But it doesn't matter. Because this," she gestured between us. "It shouldn't matter either." I swallowed. "Maybe not. But it does." The words sounded too bare, almost fragile in the air. Her shoulders slumped. She looked down at her hands, tracing the rim of her mug. For a long time, she didn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. "You make me feel seen, and that terrifies me." Something in me broke open at that. I leaned forward, not to touch her. Not yet, but just close enough that she had to lift her eyes. "I'm not asking for anything," I said. "I just don't want to keep pretending this doesn't exist." Her lips parted, then closed. She gave the smallest nod, like it cost her something. We sat there, the air thick, both of us holding on to silence as if it could protect us. Finally, she reached out, slow and uncertain, and let her hand rest over mine. It wasn't dramatic. No kiss, no declaration. Just the warmth of her skin against mine, her thumb brushing once, tentative. I met her gaze. She gave the faintest smile, almost sad, almost relieved. "Okay," she whispered, and somehow that was enough. It didn't change overnight. I still went days without seeing her. Still found myself drifting to the cafe only to find her table empty. But over time, the silences between us shifted. They weren't heavy anymore. They just were. Some mornings, I'd catch her at 8:47 sharp, already halfway through her tea, and she'd slide the chair opposite hers back without a word. Other days, she'd knock on my door with a thermos in hand, jasmine for her, black coffee for me. We never called it a ritual, but it became one. The bench under the broken street lamp turned into ours too. Sometimes we'd sit there after a walk, not saying much, just listening to the city thinning around us. Once, she laughed at how I kept folding napkins even when there weren't any, just my fingers twitching at the memory. She reached over, stilled my hand with hers, and we let the moment hang. There were still shadows. She never spoke much about Boston, though I knew her son called sometimes. I didn't press. She didn't ask about the messages I kept drafting and deleting late at night, the ones to people I hadn't spoken to in years. We carried our ghosts quietly, without trying to fix them. But life grew steadier, warmer. I started taking evening classes, just one at first. She teased me about my half-finished notes, then stayed up helping me review. She switched from reading in silence at the cafe to letting me sit beside her, my shoulder brushing hers while we shared headphones for music. Nothing grand, just small pieces stitched together until the air between us felt natural, lived in. Looking back, I don't remember a single turning point, no moment when it became official. It was more like a slow unpausing, the sentence finally finishing itself. One night, sitting again on that bench, she leaned her head against my shoulder. No words, no explanations, just weight, real and certain. I thought about the first time I saw her, the thermos, the paperback, the way she noticed my order before I even noticed her. All of it had led here, to this quiet place that belonged only to us. I don't know if love is the right word, or if naming it even matters. What I do know is that I look forward to the mornings now. To the tea, the coffee, the sound of her turning a page. To the way she glances at me when she thinks I'm not watching. That's enough. And maybe that's everything. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?